Wouldn't it be wonderful if every day was a pleasant journey down the yellow brick road of life? Unfortunately, it's not. So what should we do when God throws us lemons? Just make lemonade? Well, Father Pat Lavin has his own secret recipe he's willing to share. We'll also speak candidly with Bishop James T. McHugh of the Diocese of Camden as he makes his debut one-on-one. It's all tonight on Catholic Magazine.
With your window on your world, this is Catholic Magazine. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Perello.
The skinny Paul Perello.
Oh,
He's
thank
getting
you.
skinny, folks. And I'm Pat Shelton. Thanks for being with us again tonight.
On our program this evening, we often hear about incidents of domestic abuse. Oftentimes, these victims of domestic abuse don't know where to turn for help. We'll learn about one such program tonight, Bethlehem House.
And tonight, we'll be introducing a brand new feature on Catholic Magazine. It's titled One-on-One. One-on-one interviews with the bishops of the three dioceses we serve, Trenton, Camden, and Philadelphia.
But first, we meet an old friend once again, and Father Pat Lavin is here. And tonight, Father Pat tells us that when things get us down and out, we should just turn around that negative and make it something positive.
All of us have our own story, and each of us look at life from our own particular point of view. And the same was true with the writers of the Gospel. We have Luke, who reduced the public ministry of Jesus to his travels from Galilee to Jerusalem. If we look at Demetrius Dumm's book, Flowers in the Desert, we find that Demet is saying that we must set our face toward Jerusalem. And to set one's face meant that we set our direction and we can't be diverted from it. For you and for me, it's moving from the Galilee of self-discovery and self-awareness to the Jerusalem of self-sacrifice, where the center of Jerusalem is the temple, and the center of the temple is the altar of sacrifice. And Luke says to us, if the message is to be clear, we must be willing to follow Jesus on that journey of faith. Isaiah says, look to the King in all of his glory and the highlands far away. It is there where God is worshipped, and it is there where the Lord is like a wide river of protection. For he is lawgiver, he is judge, he is the one who cares, and he is the one who saves. As we walk along this yellow brick road of life, there are many, many times when we're faced with pain, we're faced with hurt, we're faced with neglect and disappointment. But it's necessary for us to move on. As Reverend Schuller says, that we must be able to turn our scars into stars. You know, all of life, we get lemons. But fortunately through the sovereignty of God and the creativity of man, we're able to change those lemons around and make it into lemonade for the quench of our thirst. It's a story told, I don't know where I heard it before, but it's about the Shah of Iran. When his palace was being built, the architect planned a grand entryway filled with the best mirror from Paris. And when the order arrived, they opened up the packages, and lo and behold, the mirrors were broken. Every single one of them were smashed to smithereens. They were hurt, if you want. I think that's a good word. The pieces were hurt. They were sharp, not much different than ourselves. But the man was very, very upset. The architect, he says, what am I going to do? We won't have the job done on time. And then finally, as they were sweeping up the pieces, he said, I got an idea. And he picked up piece by piece by piece and glued them to the wall. And as a result, it became a brilliant rainbow of colors, broken in order to be more beautiful. You know, you and I are very much like that. All of us are broken in our own way. We all have our sharp edges. But you take us together, all of a sudden, we find something more beautiful for God. Oh, I think Pope John Paul II put it in a very interesting way. He said, illness, be it physical, spiritual, or emotional, if taken with faith and endured with love, can transform us into the persons of Christ, where we become redemptive, for our brothers and sisters. And so when the negative hits us, let's try to take it, turn it around, and make it into something positive. Until you invite me into your home again, I'm Father Pat Lavin, and I ask you to keep on with your song.
As the season unfolds, we'll learn the positions of our bishops on various issues of the day with our new feature beginning tonight, One-on-One, with bishops of Camden, Trenton, and Philadelphia dioceses. Tonight, we'll hear from Bishop James McHugh of the Diocese of Camden.
One-on-One with Bishop James T. McHugh is brought to you by the Catholic Star-Herald, newspaper of the Diocese of Camden and the largest weekly newspaper in South Jersey. Interviewing Bishop McHugh is Kevin McLaughlin, managing editor of the Catholic Star-Herald.
Bishop, Election Day will soon be upon us. In your opinion, what are the implications of the election for Catholics?
I think the first implication is that Catholics have to remember that they have a moral obligation to take part in the whole political process. Catholics are like everybody else in the United States today. They're a little confused, they're a little frustrated, they're certainly a little insecure, and perhaps some of them have decided to just sit home and do nothing. The first and most important thing they have to realize is that they have a stake in the well-being of the country, and they have serious moral obligations to participate in the whole electoral process.
What are some of the issues that the Catholic voters should be concerned about as they go into the ballot?
Catholics should have a concern about all the issues affecting the country, but they should sort of emphasize or give particular concern to those touching on the well-being of the human person, on order in society, on the need to extend all of the benefits of this society to everyone. In other words, they should be concerned about social justice issues and social equity issues. Primarily, they should see themselves as, in a sense, in a vanguard in leading the country to think in terms of the well-being of each individual person, each individual family, and of the country as a whole. I think many of our people have lost a sense of pride in the United States of America. Catholics should be leaders in trying to restore that sense of pride and participation.
Now, should the life issues like abortion and euthanasia take precedence over other issues such as the economy?
I think that the life issues, especially abortion, euthanasia, are fundamental to the whole process. Once we begin to deny the value of any single human being, whether it's the unborn child in the womb or the elderly or chronically ill, once we begin to deny the value of that person, then the rest of our social fabric begins to come apart. There's no sense in talking about jobs and economy and housing and discrimination if in fact it's premised on an understanding that there's a certain class of human beings that don't count, whether they're unborn babies or they're old people in nursing homes or they're people who are terribly ill. So I think that for Catholics, both in terms of their own commitments, considerations about the unborn and about the elderly and the sick should take a certain prominence in the way they make up their mind about the people that they will elect to public office. And secondly, I think they should make those concerns known to the candidates for public office. There's been too much just dismissal of certain issues, especially the life issues, on the grounds that this is a religious matter and it has no place in the public forum, or on the grounds that after all it's just a matter of choice. Many of the people who are pro-abortion in this society have capitalized on the effort to reduce it to jargon. We're dealing with very serious things here: the sanctity of human life, the value of the human person, the responsibility of a society to protect human life at every stage of its existence from conception to natural death. And I think that Catholics should give very strong emphasis. They should bring those issues to the attention of everybody vying for a place in public office, and they should make that a criteria for the way they decide on regarding whom they will vote.
Now, the U.S. bishops, in a letter issued at the end of last year, stressed the importance of evaluating candidates and issues in light of their impact on children and families. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that I think that the life issues and children and families go together, because we've learned that from the whole debate about abortion in this society, that as Chris Luker said a long time ago in one of her major sociological studies, the struggle about abortion in this country is a struggle about conflicting views of family and parenthood. And I think that we certainly want to have programs that stabilize or benefit families and children. But we have to assert at the very outset that the life of every child, including the unborn child, is important and should be sustained by our governmental efforts and by our policies and by our programs. The bishops repeatedly have said that there are a number of issues that have to be looked at, but they've also said repeatedly that at this time and in this point in history, the life issues, especially the abortion issue, is a fundamental issue that should take dominance over our concerns, and that if people are weak or try to dodge the life issues, try to equivocate, then in effect their word is not to be trusted on anything else.
Many have criticized church leaders for getting too entangled in politics and in taking strong stands on particular issues, sometimes even on a particular piece of legislation. What are your thoughts on the church's role in the political process in that sense?
I think the church has a definite role to take a very strong stand and, in a sense, to lobby for certain types of legislation. That's what the political process is all about in the United States of America. And if we're going to give precedence to children and to families and to the dignity and the sanctity of life and the value of the human person, then we have to get out there and work hard for the adoption of legislation that supports those concerns. I don't think that the church has ever been too strong. The church couples its concern about the social justice issues, things like housing and discrimination, with a tremendous outpouring of financial resources that come from the free will donations of the Catholic people. We estimate that there's $800 million to $1 billion a year that the church allocates in social justice and social service and health care programs. So the Catholic people are supporting these things by their voluntary contributions. Certainly we then should lobby for the kind of legislation and the kinds of programs that dovetail with what the church is doing. And the same thing is true of education. We've been walled out of any consideration of Catholic schools, and yet the Catholic educational enterprise, from preschool through colleges, universities, and graduate degrees, makes an enormous impact and creates a tremendous benefit for this country. We just can't tolerate being silenced, being ostracized in terms of our educational commitments and our educational resources. That all has to come into it, and Catholics should certainly lobby for those things. There's nothing wrong with it, and certainly there's nothing, it would be foolhardy not to do so. The one place where we draw the line is that we don't lobby for this candidate over that candidate. But if a candidate, by his or her positions, places himself or herself in open opposition to the priority list of Roman Catholics, then he or she must know that that has some impact on the electoral process. I don't see how they can avoid it.
Now, why does the church not take particular stands on candidates for or against?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons. One might be fairness. The church itself does not want to use its institutional image to endorse one or another candidate. Secondly, there are regulations in our country in terms of government laws and policies that prevent the church from, in fact, becoming a lobbying institution for a candidate. And I think that ultimately there are different criteria that the individual person has to look at. Sometimes both candidates are wonderful and it's hard to choose between them. And other times both of them are pretty poor. And so a person has to make sort of a lesser evil choice, and it's pretty hard to make that kind of choice. But I think that as far as I'm concerned, Catholics should try to do that rather than walk away from the electoral process.
Analysts will often say that a particular candidate is making a move to court the Catholic vote. In your opinion, is there such a thing? And if there is, what are the characteristics of the Catholic vote?
I think there's a Catholic vote out there. There's 50 million Catholics out of 250 million people. We're a minority. We've always been a minority. We might be the largest religious bloc in the country, but we're still a minority. We have made tremendous contributions to the life of this country. We have institutions today, hospitals, schools, social service agencies, especially in our inner cities where there's great poverty and great destitution. And the church has an interest in all those things because the church is trying to benefit people, not only Roman Catholics. I just came from a meeting about our inner city schools where large proportions of the children are not Catholic. So I think that we have a concern about different issues. Yes, there is a Catholic interest in these things, And to some degree, that Catholic interest has been nullified, especially in this particular electoral season. I think that unfortunately, Catholics have been made to feel that they are not welcome in the electoral process. Traditionally, Catholics fell into the Democratic Party. They were the working people. They were the immigrants. But now, because of stands of that party and because of the attitudes of some of the national leadership, Catholics feel themselves on the outside. They're almost faced with a policy of exclusion, and I think they have to pound the doors and say, we want back in. This is not going to be a one-party country. A lot of Catholics may not feel very comfortable in the Republican Party. Frankly, I don't care where they feel comfortable. My point is they ought to have a choice, and neither party ought to establish policies or attitudes or have candidates who denigrate Roman Catholics. And some of that has gone on. I think we've endured more than a little ridicule and mockery during this past year or so. I think of the debates when Justice Thomas was up and his religious background and his Catholic schooling was questioned as to whether or not that might derogate from his becoming a Supreme Court justice. And all the mockery that went on about Governor Casey, the Pope buttons, which were just ridiculing him because he had taken a strong pro-life stand. I think those kinds of things are out of place in this country, but Catholics, as I said, have to pound the table and kick the door to let people know we just won't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm. One of your favorite subjects, Bishop, is the media. Some have accused the media of a bias in covering the elections. Do you think there is a bias in the media, and if so, how can people pick that up when they're reading the newspaper, watching their television?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a strong pro-abortion bias in some parts of the media. I think we've seen it time and time again, and people have to be sensitive to that. Secondly, I think that people have to realize that you can't, it's not quite fair to talk about the media globally. You have electronic media, you have radios, you have print media. I think that in our country, any particular echelon, whether it's the media, big business, the universities, can too easily fall into one mindset. And I think that has to be challenged. So I think that Catholics themselves, first of all, I think they should, watch television, listen to the radio, and read the newspapers. But always give it a reasonable discount, because not everything they see, hear, or read is absolute truth just because someone else said it. I think that Catholics, and Americans in general, have to have a little bit more sophisticated view of themselves. They can think, they can understand, they can discriminate amongst ideas, and that's what they have to do. I don't think we should blame the media for all our problems. I mean, sure, there's a certain amount of bias in the media, as there is any place. Given that, we get beyond it.
Thank you, Bishop.
One-on-One was brought to you by the Catholic Star Herald, weekly newspaper of the Diocese of Camden. To subscribe to the Catholic Star Herald, call 609-756-7910 during business hours.
What a good idea. An opportunity to get sort of close and personal with our bishops, to learn what they think and how they feel about things. Very good. Well, we've got some more good stuff for you. Why don't you stay tuned for more of Catholic Magazine.
One of the most important things you can ever learn here is to pray, to speak to God, to express what is in your heart, to show your dependence on Him, to thank Him for the gift of life, for your families, and for everything you have received.
If you took away a star for every 1 million people who didn't vote, and a stripe for every 5 million non-voters, and a patch of blue for the 10 million people who didn't care, exactly what kind of flag are we waving?
Good news in Catholic education is the theme for the 1992 Catholic Standard and Time Student Subscription Drive. By ordering a subscription to the Standard, you'll be giving a young person an opportunity to receive scholarship money for their education. Order the Catholic Standard and Times today from your favorite Catholic school student, or call the Standard at 587-3660 for subscription information and for the good news.
We welcome your comments, suggestions, and donations and encourage you to write us at Catholic Magazine, St. Charles Seminary, 1000 East Wynwood Road, Overbrook, PA, 19096, or call us during regular business hours at 668-9842.
Welcome back to Catholic Magazine. Practically every minute of every day, there is a case of domestic, sexual, and child abuse reported. Oftentimes, the victims of these crimes don't know where to turn for help. Tonight, we learn of one such place where victims can go for help, Bethlehem House.
This is Bethlehem House, a refuge for women and children who are victims of domestic violence. It's unique because it offers long-term shelter so these families can find emotional healing as well as an education and job training.
The average stay here is 6 months, and our average head count last year was extremely high. It ranged between 75 and 85. The women and children were extremely crowded. However, there just were not enough services in our area to provide. We believe that walking with a woman on a journey and a child on a journey from the trauma to placement in a new home, which we do, where we help the woman to furnish her home, get jobs, get the children placed in school and the kind of services they need, that can't be done in 30 to 60 days. That takes time. And first, the family needs some time to be able to heal and to get a sense of where they want to go so that the choices are theirs and not the system's.
Before, when I was with my batterer, I didn't care how I looked. I didn't care what I did. And then coming here, you learn to have more self-assurance about what you look like, how you come off to people, how you talk, and it builds you up where you can go and say, I can talk to that person, whereas before is I can't talk to them. And it helps you out where you can stand up and say, I'm a strong person.
Darlene is now ready to begin a new life on her own. She's moving to her own house and has just recently completed paralegal training.
It was hard. I fought all the way. For the first 3 months, I kept saying, I can't find babysitters, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then somewhere in the middle, I said, I'm going for my school. And it was exciting. For me, I learned a lot. When I graduated at the top of my class. I got a special award for living in a shelter, having 5 children, and graduating with a 3.7 average. I'm going, all right, at least I did something right.
Lorelei is glad Bethlehem House provides long-term assistance. She ran away from her batterer after being repeatedly raped in front of her 6-year-old son.
I was done with my program after, I would say about 6 months. However, my son had been so physically and emotionally abused that the psychologist that's on staff here told me that if Matthew didn't remain in the controlled environment, that Matthew would be institutionalized. That's how bad that he was. So we remained here another 2 years living in this shelter. My son attends public school. He has received Most Improved Student of the Year. And thank God that there was a long-term shelter here to help us through our problems, to show me how to be a mother and show me how to be a person.
Children are our future. And if we are to look for a time when there is no domestic violence, we have to invest in the children. 80% of batterers come from domestic violence homes. 60% of battered women come from these homes. So we're investing in the future. However, we also have an eye to the present. These children have come to us severely abused. In the county of San Bernardino alone, there's 75,000 children living in domestic violence homes, and half of them will become documented cases of child abuse. That's the lucky half. We have lots of children who haven't gotten into the system who come through this program. there's someone like Adam. Adam's been here for 2 years. Adam was 4 when he came to us. The trauma of watching his 3 sisters be raped and beaten weekly for his entire life left Adam with a thick stammer. But this little boy was very long on courage. It was he who called 911, called the police, told the police that his mother was being beaten, and then when the police arrived, told the police that his sisters who were hiding in the back bedroom had been hurt. Today, Adam's mother, armed with a GED, parenting skills, therapy, and a lot of support, has found her place to live, a beautiful apartment, and is proceeding to furnish it as she's getting ready to move. Adam can speak intelligibly. His stammer, not quite as noticeable, hardly noticeable at all. But most importantly, Adam doesn't recoil from human touch. Adam can have his cheeks stroked, get his hugs, find hope for the future. Adam is on his way to being a happy, successful adult. He's gained an opportunity to have the happiness which is every child's birthright. Are you ready to go play? You are? Would you like a hug? Yeah. Okay.
Praise the Lord. What a wonderful piece. Well, having Bishop McHugh on today's program prompts me to remind you that one of the priests from the Camden Diocese will be the homilist at this year's St. Martin de Porres Mass at the Cathedral Basilica in Philadelphia on Sunday, November 8th at 2:30. And we'd like everybody to come on down and fellowship with us.
Until the next time, for Catholic Magazine, I'm Paul Perillo.
And I'm Pat Sheldon. Thanks for being with us. Good night.
SEP materials for Catholic Magazine provided by Tague Lumber Incorporated, serving the Delaware Valley for over 75 years. And by John Wanamaker, fine stores in the Delaware Valley.